of Principles. If you look at the Declaration of Principles signed by the three countries, then for me as an international water lawyer, the first thing I ask myself, why are those countries having a problem with the UN Convention? What they have done in the Declaration of Principles is copy the UN Convention and the Cooperative Framework Agreement. And if, in fact, actually, the Declaration of Principles went further than the UN Convention. The UN Convention has 7 factors for determining equitable and reasonable utilization. The Declaration of Principles added 2 more factors, strengthening the concept, the contribution of each state to the shared river, and then the drainage basin area in each of the countries. So basically, I mean, whether we talk about the 59 agreement or the 1902 agreement or the cooperative framework agreement or the Declaration of Principle, we are really talking about 4 basic principles which the 3 parties have agreed to through one agreement or another: equitable and reasonable utilization, obligation not to cause significant harm, notification, exchange of data and information, the peaceful settlement of disputes.
Right. Can I answer?
May I come in, Anna-Maria, here?
No, can I answer first because it's my turn, if possible?
Okay, so we'll just go in terms of order. So Nirvana, and then we'll go back to Zerion, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm just, first of all, I'm glad that your Sudanese guest, who is clearly very specialist in the water issue, and I appreciate his knowledge, he's talking as an independent, because it seems like the Sudanese government have acted against his advice, because the Sudanese government have submitted a letter to the United Nations Security Council expressing concern about the failure of negotiation to reach a deal. So it's not just Egypt who went to the United Nations. The Sudanese government have submitted letter as well. Also, he mentioned the Permanent Court of International Justice. Egypt asked for arbitration, and Ethiopia was the one who rejected international arbitration. So it's not just us. I think I don't speak for the Egyptian government, but I think the Egyptian government will be happy to take the whole matter to a court specialized in water issue to issue the dispute, because I will tell you, the problem of this dispute is that it will set precedent for the future, which, as he rightly mentioned, all the Nile Basin will be watched and observed, and it might trigger other conflict with other Nile Basin countries. I'm also about all the 9 treaties and commenting about it and what is unfortunate and what is unfortunate or fortunate. Only God can change the past. We cannot change the past. We can only we can only deal with what it is and try to reach a new understanding. The 1959 could be described as unfortunate, bad, evil, colonial. You can say what you like about it, but within the context of 1959, may I remind my Sudanese brother, that it was the context of the independence of Sudan from Egypt and the desire of Egypt to reach a deal with its new independent neighbor to secure a relationship between the 2 countries. And I would appeal to all parties to see the 59 as an example of a bad or colonial or unfortunate water share, but as a way to trust 2 countries and have empathy if we saw it merely between 2 countries trying to build trust, the 1959 built new trust and water cooperation between Egypt and Sudan. Rightly or wrongly or unfairly, that's in that time frame, in that history, in that context, wasn't the issue. The issue is to build a trust after Sudan got its independence. We moved on from that. We moved on to the 1993 declaration and or understanding, and then the 2015 principle. Yes, we didn't need the African Union initially because there was a dialogue, and the dialogue is still continuing. But now we reach the stock of the 10% dispute of the issues, and I'm not part of the negotiating team, so it's a bit unfair on me to talk about the details. But I will tell you, all what we wanted is not affect. We are 20% of the Nile Basin population, and we are consuming only 3% of the Nile. But I want to mention something about mentioned by my Ethiopian brother. He mentioned that Egypt abrogated the 1993 agreement by diverting the Nile. I will say we are not diverting it to another country. We are not exporting the water. Sinai is not an independent country or occupied by Israel. Sinai is part of the national territory of Egypt. And we were trying to do reform of our water distribution so the community of our population will not stuck by the Nile Valley and start to have other communities in the desert, because 97% of our land are desert. So we needed to use our sources of water efficiently to make our communities expand in the desert. That shouldn't cause any grievance to anybody. We didn't take or use any extra water sources. We are just efficiently using our water sources. So neither the Peace Canal nor Toshka are bad things. The Ethiopian media are blaming Egypt of not using water properly and asking us to do water reform. I found that funny, while we actually doing that by distributing our water and expanding our community. We are at risk at drought that the Nile Delta could be arid, could not be usable for human inhabitants, and up to 10 million of our people could not live in the Delta anymore if any drought in the future. Why are you blaming us for using the Nile to distribute our community within our territories? Thank you.
Zarion, if you want to respond to Salman from earlier and to Nirvana.
Yeah. I can't agree more with Salman. Thank you very much, Salman. The usual Salman, very interesting indeed. But I want to comment one thing regarding the 1969 agreement. I agree with you, Salman. It's a very unfortunate agreement here. It disfranchises 9 sovereign countries in the Nile from their natural right, from their legitimate right to use the Nile water. For example, Ethiopia contributing 77 billion cubic meters of water, which is 86% of the annual flow, and the agreement between Egypt and Sudan. It is the title as rightly stated by Salman. It is for the full utilization of the Nile. It is very funny, to be honest, 2 water-spent countries dividing the entire flow of the Nile between themselves only. For that reason, Ethiopia has made clear from the very beginning, actually, knowing that there was a kind of discussion between the 2 countries, we actually issued statements, communiques, and aid memoirs from our Ministry of Foreign Affairs starting from 1956. And in 1956, 1957, 1980, 1977, and 1997, we have made our position clear, and the 1959 agreement is non-existent for Ethiopia, and it is none of our concern, actually. And just as Nirvana says, yes, we cannot change the past, but we can do justice to the past. We cannot maintain historic injustices, historic wrongs as historic rights. That is really, really important. We need to move forward, and the way to move forward is by recognizing, as Salman rightly said, international law has very basic and beautiful principle, equitable and reasonable utilization, and let us go that way. Let us have this together. Let us use this water together. And then we will have benefit to the river, and we can generate benefit from the river, beyond the river, and from the river. We can use that. We can use the river for the benefit of our people. We say in Ethiopia, one river, one people, and in Arabic we have this saying, Nahar Wahid, Sha'ab Wahid. We are one people really. And the only way to achieve at that point is when we recognize the Nile belongs to all the 11 countries, not to or one country. That is the most important thing. Regarding the failure of negotiation, the negotiation didn't fail. I don't know where Nevada gets this information, and Sudan didn't say the negotiation has failed. It didn't fail. It is Egypt who first took the matter to the United Nations Security Council for information, and then portraying a single project, a dam which generates electricity. The water will be retained, then it will hit the turbine and flow downstream to Egypt and Sudan. Such a beautiful project which will elevate millions of people out of abject poverty, is criminalized as a threat to international peace and security. Which one is really a threat to peace and security? Is that poverty in Ethiopia? Is that poverty in the Horn of Africa? Is that energy insecurity, water insecurity, food insecurity in the countries in the region, or a development project? We need to be frank on this, to be honest. So the negotiation didn't fail. Our good friend, Professor Yassir, I was attending the meeting, the last meeting. He said, I want to consult my prime minister. And Ethiopia was waiting for Minister Yassir to come back after his consultation with His Excellency Abdullah Hamdok, Dr. Abdullah Hamdok, and we are waiting for that. And in the meantime, we found ourselves that Egypt sending another memo to the United Security Council. We were forced to do the same, and Sudan followed. That is the whole process. And also, when it comes to arbitration and peaceful settlement of disputes, Dr. Salman was talking about actually another development in international water law. If Nevada raised about peaceful settlement of disputes, we, in the agreement of the Declaration of Principles, as clearly stated by Dr. Salman, Principle 10 is about peaceful settlement of disputes regarding the interpretation and implementation of the DOP. Now here, the three countries have only one document together. Ethiopia, when it comes to the Nile utilization, it has the CFA. Egypt and Sudan may quote the 1959 agreement, which I said is non-existent for us. But the three countries have a single document that they signed at the level of their heads of state and government. And that's the agreement on the Declaration of Principles. And it clearly states the procedures to follow in settling disputes in the interpretation and implementation of the Declaration of Principles. And there is no arbitration mentioned there. It is either consultation, negotiation, conciliation, or mediation, or referring the matter to state and government. We have agreed there, and that is where we shall go. But let me give you this information for all of you. During the last days of the negotiation on the agreement on the Declaration of Principles, Egypt brought one provision, one article to be included in the Declaration of Principles at the last minute. And that was a call for reaching a comprehensive agreement, implementing the Declaration of Principles, and making it binding, this and that. The nomenclature of any document signed between countries according to international law, whether it's exchange of notes, whether it is a memoranda, whether it is agreement or treaty, it is binding. That is the most important thing. But the details, what was needed by Egypt was, in the name of discussing, negotiating, and agreeing on the first filling and operation of the dam, we were, to be cornered and our future development to be foreclosed. That is unacceptable. That's unacceptable. So we need, and we respect that. And Nevada also stated about the 3% of the water that is reaching Egypt. And here the problem is this. In Egypt, especially by people like the Abu Zaidi, we have been witnessing and reading pseudoscience, unfortunately, about the rain in the Nile Basin, and especially about the rain in Ethiopia. And I was surprised when His Excellency Minister Shukri also stated the same pseudoscience in the United Nations Security Council. The 900-something billion cubic meters of water Ethiopia is receiving each year. Oh, come on. One thing that we need to be clear is the rain in Ethiopia is a 3 months rain. And 60% of Ethiopia is arid or semi-arid. It's a dry land. And we do not have that much water. All the water is transboundary, and all the water that we have is 124 billion cubic meters of water, including the Nile, 77 billion cubic meters of water. Now, what we are being asked is not to use that same rainwater. Had we had that amount of water, we wouldn't have been the humanitarian cause of the West in the 1980s, while Egypt survived the drought in the Nile Basin. We lost millions of Ethiopians, young and old. Children are not going to school because of lack